One, as an example, is, and we've acknowledged this, in our conversations that lead back to my time in the United States Senate, how many of the guns and the weapons that are being used by gangs to commit acts of violence here in Jamaica are purchased in the United States and then shipped here.
All right, so today, talking about U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio's recent visit to Jamaica.
Yeah, we're going to look at what was actually said, what it could mean, and what it all means for Jamaica.
Exactly.
Okay, number 10.
This one's about the reevaluation of travel advisories.
Right. Travel advisories, those things that can really make or break a tourism industry.
Oh, huge for a country like Jamaica.
Now, the Prime Minister of Jamaica, he really emphasized that Jamaica is safer than it has been in the past 2 decades. He even said that crimes against visitors are less than 0.01% of the over 3 million visitors Jamaica gets every year.
Wow, so basically negligible.
Basically.
Yeah.
And of course, he brought up the need for travel advisories to actually reflect this reality.
Makes sense. I mean, if it's safer than it's been in decades, the advisories should probably reflect that, right?
Right, exactly. Now, Secretary Rubio, he responded pretty directly to that, saying that the U.S. would reevaluate those travel advisories.
Did he give any specifics?
Well, he did acknowledge the impressive progress that Jamaica's made, but he didn't give a timeline or mention the specific metrics they'd use for this reevaluation.
Classic politician. All right, number 9. This one's about expanding bilateral labor agreements.
Yes, the agreements that have been going on for, what, like 80 years?
80 years, that's what the Prime Minister said. He brought up these agreements that make it easier for skilled and semi-skilled Jamaicans to work in the U.S.
Especially in industries like agriculture and hospitality.
Right. And he talked about expanding them even further, including partnerships for skills development.
Yeah, Rubio echoed that sentiment, talking about partnering to create opportunities for skills training. Okay, number 8, this is about Jamaica's role as a logistics hub.
So basically making the most of their location.
Exactly. The Prime Minister talked about working with U.S. companies to really leverage Jamaica's position as a prime transshipment hub in the Americas.
And how that could strengthen their role in global trade.
Right. Now, Rubio tied this to concerns about global supply chains.
Makes sense with all the talk about nearshoring and everything.
Oh, yeah. He was questioning why so much production is happening so far away from the U.S. when it could be closer in the hemisphere.
And he specifically mentioned Jamaica.
He did. He said that both countries stand to benefit.
Well, sure, on paper it sounds good. Economic growth, infrastructure development. Who wouldn't want that?
But again, we have to look deeper.
So who really benefits the most? Okay, what's next?
Number 7 is about attracting more U.S. investment into Jamaica.
And of course, the Prime Minister was highlighting all of Jamaica's strength,
Stable macroeconomic framework,
Yeah.
positive growth trajectory, the whole 9 yards.
And he specifically mentioned wanting U.S. investment in emerging sectors like energy and nearshoring.
And Rubio seemed receptive to that. He even said that Jamaica could benefit from a relocation of productive capacity.
Did he give any examples?
He mentioned energy like U.S. liquefied natural gas exports and even brought up seabed mining.
Seabed mining. Now that sounds a little concerning.
Number 6 is about the renewal of CB era,
CB era, what is that again?
the Caribbean Basin Economic Recovery Act.
Right. Trade stuff.
Trade stuff, exactly. And the Prime Minister, he made it very clear that this is incredibly important for Jamaica and all the CARICOM member states.
He even mentioned the huge amount of bilateral trade they do with the U.S., over $3 billion in 2023 alone.
Yeah, this is really about Jamaica's economic stability.
Yeah.
CB era gives them preferential trade access to the U.S. market, and if it lapses,
That would be bad.
that would be very bad.
Right.
Now, the fact that it needs to be renewed regularly just shows how reliant Jamaica is on U.S. trade policy.
So it's like a bargaining chip for the U.S.?
You could see it that way. Gives them leverage in other areas.
Interesting.
Number 5 is all about U.S. concerns regarding China's investment in Jamaica.
Oh, so now China's involved.
It seems so. Rubio was very upfront about this. He said it's not about the investment itself, but about what he called predatory practices.
So what did he mean by that?
He gave some examples, things like projects that are never actually built, bringing in Chinese workers instead of local ones, offering unsustainable loans, and basically undercutting competition with government-subsidized companies.
So basically the U.S. doesn't trust China's motives.
Pretty much. Now, he did try to soften it a bit by saying it wasn't specifically directed at Jamaica.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he claimed it's a broader concern, but come on.
Coming from the Secretary of State, you got to read between the lines, right?
Exactly. Number 4 is about the restructuring of U.S. foreign aid.
Foreign aid, interesting.
Yeah, this is a big one. Rubio basically announced that the U.S. is changing how they do aid.
So they're not cutting it off completely?
No, he said they're not getting out of the aid business.
Yep.
But they want to be more strategic about it. They want to make sure it aligns with U.S. foreign policy priorities and the actual needs of the countries they're helping.
Okay, so how is that different from what they were doing before?
Well, he contrasted the old model, where USA basically dictated what those needs were and often worked through NGOs, with a new vision where U.S. embassies work directly with the host governments on their stated needs.
So focusing on things like skills training, attracting investment trade, and domestic intelligence.
Right. The focus on Jamaican priorities sounds good in theory, but that little phrase, aligned with foreign policy priorities, that's the part that makes me a little uneasy. Number 3 is Haiti and the whole regional security situation.
Right. Haiti's been in crisis for a while now.
And it's having a ripple effect on the whole region, including Jamaica.
So what did they say about it?
Well, both leaders acknowledged that the situation in Haiti is a threat, and they agreed on the need to stabilize things.
Sounds like a no-brainer.
Right. The Prime Minister of Jamaica stressed that he wants continued partnership with the U.S. on this issue.
And what did Rubio say?
He emphasized the need to rapidly expand the Haitian National Police, the HNP.
Give them more resources and manpower.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, Jamaica's already contributing to the efforts in Haiti.
But how far will they go? I mean, the instability in Haiti is a regional problem, but Jamaica has to prioritize its own security too.
Number 2 is all about the so-called global war on gangs and increased security cooperation.
That sounds like a lot.
It is. This was a big focus of the meeting with both sides, really emphasizing the need to work together to combat transnational crime.
Okay, so what does that look like in practice?
Well, Rubio announced a lot of U.S. support for Jamaica in this area.
Like what?
They're going to bolster Jamaica's marine domain awareness and intelligence surveillance capabilities.
Wow.
And they're going to redirect some development assistance towards shared security goals.
So things like fighting lottery scammers, transnational organized crime, trafficking of guns and funds, that kind of thing.
Exactly. But the most interesting part was that Rubio admitted something pretty big.
What's that?
He acknowledged that a lot of the guns being used by gangs in Jamaica are actually coming from the U.S.
Oh, wow. That's a big admission.
Yeah. And he pledged to do more to stop that flow of weapons. Finally, at our number 1 takeaway, the most crucial point.
Drumroll, please.
It's about the changing nature of the U.S.-Jamaica partnership and how it fits into the U.S.'s shifting global trade policy.
Okay, so the big picture stuff.
Exactly. Now, Rubio came right out and said that the U.S. president is realigning American global trade policy.
So what does that mean?
Basically, he said it's about resetting global trade to make it more fair to the U.S.
Fair. According to who?
Well, according to the U.S., of course.
Yeah.
He did say that this wasn't specifically aimed at Jamaica, but he went on to talk about how this will create opportunities for new alignments and new trade arrangements.
And he specifically mentioned Jamaica as one of those places.
He did. He kept emphasizing mutually beneficial relationships and how the U.S. wants other countries to see being close to them as a good thing.
Beneficial, helpful, all that jazz.
Exactly. He even suggested that Jamaica could be a model for other countries. Model for how to cooperate with the U.S. in areas like security, trade, investment, skills, acquisition, all that.
So reading between the lines. So this visit from Rubio, it's a clear signal that the U.S. wants closer ties with Jamaica.
Especially when it comes to security, and potentially even more on trade and investment.
But it's happening at a time when the U.S. is rethinking its global strategy.
With America first, still very much the guiding principle.
What tough questions should Jamaican leaders be asking their U.S. counterparts?
How can they make sure this is a truly reciprocal relationship and not just about serving U.S. interests?
Thanks for joining us today.